If you are thinking about booking an Alaskan cruise, you need to watch this video. Going on an Alaskan cruise is the cruise of a lifetime. The views are spectacular, the untouched landscapes are magnificent, but there are some big decisions that have to be made. You need to decide which itinerary you're going to do, which cruise line you're going to go on, and which cabin you're going to stay in. And the selection of the cabin is more challenging with an Alaskan cruise than with a cruise to another location. In this video, I'm going to share with you 6 pro tips so that you select the cabin that's best for you, and it's all coming up. Welcome to the Travel Scouts. My name is Jason and we are your cruise information channel. So if you love cruising, consider subscribing, and if you are or are planning to cruise to Alaska, we have loads of videos that are out and more that's coming so that you have the perfect cruise when you go, so be sure to check them out. Okay, let's jump right into this. 6 considerations so that you select the best cruise cabin for you on your Alaska cruise. Let's jump right into it with number 1. Let's talk about balconies. Now, most people will tell you that having a balcony cabin on a cruise to Alaska is a must, and I think that generally that is a good rule. In some of the later tips, I'm going to share with you some reasons why a balcony cabin may not be best for you. But look, a balcony cabin on an Alaskan cruise has some great benefits. An Alaskan cruise is different from other cruises because many of the views and the experience you get on an Alaskan cruise can be taken right from the cruise ship. Usually when you're in the Caribbean, for example, when you're just out at sea, you just see water in every direction until you arrive at a port. But on an Alaskan cruise, you are seeing views and beautiful vistas all of the time. For hours or days on end, you can have a constant mountain landscape, looking at icebergs, looking at wildlife. You can see whales, you can see bears, you can see eagles. It is a super experience, and when you have a balcony cabin, you can take it all in right there from your room. Now that leads to another reason why having a balcony cabin is such a benefit on an Alaskan cruise, and that is that the decks can get really crowded. Because there's so many great sights to be seen from the cruise ship throughout the cruise, a lot of times everybody that maybe doesn't have a balcony cabin, or they just happen to be upstairs getting something to eat, they're all crowding to those decks, and sometimes it can be tough to get a spot for that great view. But when you have a balcony cabin, you always have some railing that's right there available to you, and it's only yours. You don't have to share that with anyone. I gladly share my balcony time with Kelly, and she shares with me. It's a mutual thing. Another great thing about having a balcony is that balconies are covered. And that's super important when you go to Alaska because that place tends to rain a lot. And so that crowded deck space that you have up there, it gets even more crowded because everybody begins to get under those few spots that are actually covered. It gets all crowded, but if you have a balcony, again, you have that spot and it's all yours. And one of the things I absolutely love the most about having a balcony cabin on a cruise to Alaska is that when you're in your room to freshen up or to rest a little bit or to change, you don't have to worry about missing anything. Look, I absolutely love the mountains. I seek to go to the Everest region every single year. Love the mountains. I just feel like I'm at home. But look, the landscape's changing all the time on your cruise. And if I spend an extended amount of time down in the cabin, I can wonder, like, what am I missing? Am I missing some wildlife? Am I missing just that great shot? But when you have that balcony cabin, you can just open up the curtains and you can see what the cruise ship is going by as you're there in your cabin. And then if there's something really cool that you see, you can run out to the balcony or run up to the top deck. I did this all the time on our last cruise. Let's move on to the second thing. Let's talk about interior cabins. For those that are not familiar with cruising, an interior cabin, they do not have any kind of outside view at all. But there are a few reasons why an interior cabin may be the best cabin selection for you on your Alaskan cruise. One of those reasons is that you can save some money if you book an interior cabin, and that may be a good ideal for you on an Alaskan cruise, especially if you're on a budget. And let me tell you why. On an Alaskan cruise, the excursions that are available at the various ports, they are much more expensive than excursions you would have at, say, a Caribbean cruise. But the things that you get to do, they are once in a lifetime experiences, so sometimes you can get a little trade-off. if you're on a budget, you may look at that and be like, okay, I'm going to save a little bit of money on my cabin, and I'm going to use that money that I saved to do this great experience. For example, I know one person who decided to book an interior cabin to save some money so that they can use that money to do a dog sledding adventure while they're at port in Alaska. And when asked if they thought that that was the right decision after the fact, they said absolutely, and they were thrilled with making that decision. Another reason why booking an interior cabin may be the right selection for you on your Alaska cruise is if you need complete darkness for sleep. Look, the cruising season in Alaska is pretty short. It's from May and generally goes to September, sometimes October, but it's pretty short. And in summer in Alaska, the sun sets very late and the sun rises very early. In some places, there's as many as 20 plus hours of daylight every day. So if you need that pitch black darkness to get that good night's sleep, you, my friend, really need to consider getting an interior cabin on your Alaska cruise. Let's quickly talk about the third consideration for choosing a cabin for your Alaska cruise, and that would be to get an Oceanview cabin. This is a little bit sort of middle of the road. You're not paying all of the money you would pay for a balcony cabin, but at the same time you get a window so that you can see outside. You don't get all the fresh air and stuff, but you can at least see where the cruise ship is at and the scenic views that you're passing by at the time. All right, I think 3 of the best tips and considerations are still ahead, but if you're getting any value at all out of this video, please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Let's move on to the 4th consideration, and that is when you're booking your cabin. Should you book a cabin on the starboard side or on the port side? And to clarify for those that may not be ultra familiar with those terms, the starboard side of the ship is the right side of the ship and the port side is the left side of the ship. By the way, just a real quick thing on how I remember which side is starboard and which side is port side. Port, the word has 4 letters in it. The word left has 4 letters in it. So port is the left side. And if it's the left side, then starboard must be the, right side. So that's how I keep it straight. But look, the decision about whether you're going to book on the starboard side or on the port side is actually a really important consideration when you're going on a cruise to Alaska, because one of the greatest things about an Alaskan cruise is the views that you take in each and every day. So you want to have a room where you can maximize those views and the experience of your cruise. This is where understanding your itinerary is very, very important. If you're on a round trip cruise, then it doesn't matter. You're going to catch all the views because you're going both ways. However, if you're on a one-way cruise, and a lot of Alaskan cruises are, then you need to make sure that you're on the proper side. So if you are sailing north, for example, from Seattle or Vancouver going up into Alaska, you want to make sure that you are on the right side, the starboard side of the ship, so you can take in all of those views. But if you're going south, going from Alaska down to Seattle or down to Vancouver, you want to make sure you're on the port side or the left side of the ship so you can take in all of those views. But if you don't get that cabin and it doesn't work out that way, if you're doing an inside passage, you're going to get some great views on both sides as well. Let's move on to consideration number 5, and that is booking a cabin with an outside entrance. There's a general way of thinking when it comes to booking cruise cabins, and that is that if you book a cabin that is on a higher deck, that it is a better room. However, that is not always the case on an Alaskan cruise, because what you need to check if you're booking a cabin on a higher deck is, does that room have an outside entrance? And is that covered in that area? Because some rooms on some cruise ships, the higher deck staterooms, they are outside entrance that does not have overhead cover. And you already probably know this, but what happens in Alaska a lot? It rains, and it rains, and it rains. You may be fortunate to be one of those people that goes on a cruise to Alaska and doesn't see any rain, but that is pretty rare, my friend. So when you get that higher level stateroom on that upper deck, give that some consideration, because you may be stepping out into the cold wetness every day, and that's not always the best room. And then on to consideration number 6, and that is, should you consider booking a forward or an aft cabin when you're cruising to Alaska? There's a lot of people that love both. If you're on a forward view cabin, one of the great things about that is that you get to be the first to see things as you're coming into a new area, as you're coming into port. One of the negatives there is that when you're on the front or the back of a ship, you do have a little bit more movement. So if you're subject to seasickness, you may want to consider being more in the middle of the ship. But also on the front side, you get a little bit more of the wind, so just something to think about. Now, when it comes to the aft balcony cabins, there are a lot of cruisers who are big fans of these rooms. For one, there's just that calming effect. They love the fact that there's that white wake and the white noise sound of that is just so calming. Also, a lot of times these rooms have larger balconies than others. And then the other thing is you don't have a lot of the wind because all of that is blocked, so it just gives this nice, calming, beautiful view. However, there can be some downsides from booking an aft balcony cabin. For one, there's the movement of the ship that I mentioned earlier. If you're on the front or the back, as the ship is going through the water, there can be more movement there. The other thing is that sometimes when people book an aft balcony cabin, they talk about getting the exhaust that comes back from the funnels and having to smell that. So that can create some issues. And then also depending on the ship, some ships have a sloping or a tiered aft section of balconies, so you can lose some privacy. If you're on one of the lower aft balconies, those that are in balconies above you can see down into your balcony. So if you value privacy and the ship is sort of designed that way, you may want to consider that. Okay, more Alaska cruise content is coming out very soon, so be sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when that next video comes out. But until then, keep cruising, and we'll catch you in the next video.